Saralyn Hamilton was what's known as a moderate drinker. There were never any major problems, but she had a glass of wine or two almost every day, and it was certainly a major component of her social life. But as she came to know Christ, God began to show her that casual alcohol had become an obstacle in her faith. Today, she shares how God unmistakably took her by the hand and gently led her to a life free from the bondage that alcohol had on her, before revealing other areas of her life that needed addressing, including things like Halloween and Christian yoga. Please meet Saralyn Hamilton. Saralyn Hamilton, you're here.
Yeah.
You did it.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
You're the way you got here is a little bit different. I think you reached out to Jess, who handles socials and does many things for us. And,
Okay.
She's like, "Hey, you need to watch this."
Yeah, so Jess and I actually became friends through another content creator on Instagram. I saw her on your podcast
On here, yeah.
on here, and I was like, "Oh, so proud of you! I'm so proud of you! I was so happy for her." And then months later, I'm at my son's basketball practice, and she sends me all these voice texts through Instagram about how she's helping here now and with the channel and everything. And she just got my name, like making her bed or something, and the Lord was just like, "You need to reach out to her."
So she recruited you.
She did.
That's great.
Yes.
Well, Jess is super valuable for us here, and if you've seen anything on social media, and Jess is also an intercessor and deliverance ministry person. She is amazing, and was on here talking about she had a life committed to yoga, and God brought her out through a pretty dramatic experience. So you should watch that episode. But anyway, we're super thankful for her. And I'm super thankful that she recruited you. So yeah, that's not how it usually happens here. Usually there's video submissions and all that stuff that goes through the website. And we got a whole process, and the team gathers, and it's, we can't do them all. We wish we could. But anyway, I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you.
You got here through the whole yoga, New Age, Christian yoga, and some of the deceptions in there. And I think revealing a lot of that, what you experienced and learned through that process, is going to be super helpful, because there's lots of people that say, "What's wrong with yoga? You know, it's stretching. It's for my health. I'm not worshiping other gods." And there's just whole dialogues going on around that, and we will get into that.
Right.
But in the discovery of that part of your life, which is really kind of how you came on board here, there's a story prior to that took you from, we should probably, now that we're married and having kids, probably give them church, and that's the right sound thing to do, from like this lukewarmish kind of playing the role of Christian but not true relationship with God, into a deep, rich faith.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, especially a lot of moms between sort of the 30 to 45 range or so, are going to completely identify with where you were. And then we're going to reveal kind of where you are and how God moved you from that.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Sounds really good.
Okay. Well, then I guess what we got to do first is describe where God moved you from, and then into what he moved you to.
So I come from a big family, and my parents divorced when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And so as a kid, I moved around kind of a lot. And so making friends and going to different schools, I was always trying to kind of like find my place. And I was also really tall as a little girl. And so I just like stood out and kind of got made fun of a lot. So it was hard. But I didn't really grow up going to church. We did when my parents were married, but that just wasn't a big priority growing up. I primarily lived with my mom and would see my dad, for weekends and holidays, stuff like that. So then, not really having that foundation. I mean, there were some years, I guess, like I said, prior to their separation that we did do church as a family. But then after, I think there was just a lot of like different, maybe church hurt and some stuff like that. So that was not part of most of my upbringing. Going into my adolescent years, there was just, I think my family has had some struggles with, there was just some dysfunction, and there was just different relationships that were in and out of my life, and hardships with family members that had really significant struggles. And thankfully, I had developed a passion for the love of basketball. And so that was a big part of how I believe the Lord had protected me for, those middle school and high school years where I was shown really sweet examples of what healthy marriage should look like. I would go to church with some other friends so I could kind of like see how other people did life that made that a priority. And then going into high school, again, it was that's all I did. So church for me was like driving 2 hours to practice on a Sunday and driving 2 hours back for a travel team. And that was like what was consistent in my life. So I feel like it kind of helped me stay out of a lot of trouble. And then going into college, playing basketball, that was still my focus and kept me sort of out of the party scene, and just kind of kept me, I think, protected in a way, versus not having like idle time and not having a lot going on. So going into college, I had I played for 2 seasons, and then after that I was just kind of done. Playing year round since I was 12 was just a lot, and I was getting out of a really yucky relationship with a guy who I'd been with for a long time, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm free. And I just was so excited to just experience college the way that I thought you were like supposed to.
Yeah.
And so that's when things kind of shifted for me in my life big time.
So you were introduced to things that just really weren't part of your life before?
Yeah. So partying, alcohol, drugs, that was something that I didn't really do until college. I mean, I kind of played around with it a little bit in high school, but you couldn't exactly like do that and then show up to practice or whatever hungover, and it just wasn't something that I could sustain. And so now, like being in college, when I don't have this, I'm like, oh, well, I don't really have anywhere to go, and I don't have anywhere to show up exactly. So it just kind of blew the doors open for me. The alcohol, the smoking, marijuana, I didn't do like a ton of psychedelics, but I dabbled in that some, and just really unhealthy relationships with guys, and just kind of all that was hit me pretty hard and pretty fast.
Yeah, it's not an uncommon story.
Right? It's not.
In college life today.
Yes.
And it's certainly, I think we get on the other side of college and would like to speak to our younger selves.
Yeah.
It's not what you think it is.
Right.
And it does, what happens in college doesn't necessarily stay in college. It sticks.
Yes.
It sticks. And so there's some work to be done.
But I had no, I believe that what I experienced when I was little in church, but like I had, that still carried with me, but I had no real like moral like foundation compass. Like I just was kind of like sort of floating around, and but I knew kids that were doing the like Christian clubs and things like that, but like that was nothing I ever was like attracted to.
Right. And that's, again, not an uncommon.
Yeah. Right.
There are a lot of people watching this right now, even though this is clearly a Christian based podcast, and there's a lot of people who are like, well, I didn't do that stuff, and that's great. Congratulations.
Yes.
It's not the case for a lot of people, and
Right.
Thank goodness for redemption and being washed clean. But some of us really require more washing, I think, than others. And anyway, I'm probably speaking about myself more than anything else. I had a similar college experience, and couldn't wait to get there, and I kind of abandoned sports and wanted to experience college myself. And so I'll be honest with you, I had a very, very similar experience in college. And so, and I think a great percentage of people watching this right now did as well. So how did that evolve? You met your husband in college though, right?
Yeah. So we were friends. It's a small liberal arts school, and we kind of had pockets of friends, and he played soccer, and so just people would just kind of hang out and party together like we were just friends. I would go to him and talk about like the bad experiences I was having with like the boyfriend at the time, and he would kind of talk to me about like his girlfriend or whatever. And so we were just buddies, and it was the best. I took every summer school like opportunity to like work and to go to school while I was at school. And we were in I think great books class is when I was like, he kind of caught my eye, and it did not get romantic until we were, he had like graduated and I wasn't far behind him. And so it wasn't until later that it got romantic. So yeah, we didn't date in college. So it happened after. I had plans to move. My family at the time was kind of spread out. And so I had plans to move to Europe for like backpacking for like 6 months. And he was going into the family business, and we literally got together as I'm flying across the country. So it was like very like, I don't know. It could be like a romantic comedy, but it's, we did that. I did that for a little bit, and he came to see me. It was sweet. And then I ended up moving back to, his hometown afterwards.
So the lifestyle. So you got married?
Yeah. We eventually got, engaged, married, in 2007. And we had just we traveled, we did a lot of like, just very fun events, I'll say. And yeah, we just like worked hard partied hard, like play hard, whatever, play hard, work hard kind of mentality. And so, yeah, that lifestyle just kind of continued on into the early years of our marriage. Yeah. We had our daughter about 5 years later. And I mean, it was still, we still were doing both, like raising a child, and didn't really miss a beat with the first one. Then we had our second, and that is actually when like the postpartum anxiety was really a thing for me, and it just was hard. It was really like a hard it was a hard season. But I think that's when I was like, yeah, we should probably get serious and like start going to church, for our kids in doing that. And Stephen had grown up going to church with his parents. And he did the youth group thing and all that stuff. I didn't know anything about that life. And so he was open to it when I suggested that we start taking the kids to church. So that's when things started shifting a little bit.
How so?
I guess we went to one church for about 6 months, and then we changed gears and decided to go somewhere else. Well, at the time, I was like not excited about this option at the time, but I was like, well, I'll go and I'll check it out and, see. And as soon as I walked into the sanctuary, the best feeling that I can describe this to was the feeling I got when I put on the wedding dress that I picked. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is it. I know. And when I walked into the sanctuary, when you look in and look out, you see the most beautiful view of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I was just so overwhelmed by the feeling I got when I walked in, and was just like, whoa, this is different. This is new. When I think of church, it was more of a high church experience in the Episcopal church. And so I was like, this is different. And then I'm, seeing guys on stage playing instruments with like jeans and like Birkenstocks. And I'm like, but then I see all these, all the leadership in, the formal robes and everything. And so I was like, it was like a lot for my senses. I was like sensory overload with like all that, plus like the music, and people were just like praising with their hands. And I was just like, I was like, whoa, this is a lot. So somehow we eventually just started going as a family, and it was like the truth fell on me. Like, it was crazy. It was like I knew who Jesus was. I knew, all the like facts about, the stories in the Old Testament, and even, some New Testament stuff. But it was like it was being like downloaded for the first time in my life. It was super cool. It's
amazing.
Yeah.
How that happens. And I have so far, everything you've listed is very...
Okay, we're tracking.
It's very similar experiences. And I think there are a lot of people that are saying exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
But as it relates to church,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of traditionalists think that the younger generation is just, has too short of an attention span for things. And so they have to make things, grandiose. And there's a lot of
like entertainment.
False assumptions about what that is. But it's amazing what you say, and I think everybody should hear this who is overly committed to traditionalism.
Mm-hmm.
The things that are true about our God, including things in Scripture, you had heard many times, but because of the uber traditional way they had been displayed to you,
mm-hmm.
you never heard them. You
Mm-hmm.
never experienced. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, that's just a thing I've heard. And it came to life
Mm-hmm.
when it was positioned in a let's have a conversation way rather than let's keep to our tradition way.
Yeah.
And I think that's what
Love that.
some modern churches are getting right.
Mm-hmm.
You think, okay,
Mm-hmm.
there's a guy on stage playing a guitar in Birkenstocks. I don't think that guy's going to go to heaven. I'll be honest. You know what I'm saying?
know.
It's like, what is going on here? I can't
I know.
believe this.
I know.
And why isn't everybody in a tie and all
Yeah.
the other things? And it's like, hold on. Isn't it our heart that matters? Isn't it
Uh-huh.
a connection with God that matters? I mean, I think what was going on in Jesus' day and in the first early churches and the apostles look a lot more like what a modern church that's not stiff with tradition
Yeah.
looks like, right?
Yeah.
And so we've done that. But I love the fact that Scripture and the things that are in it and the nature of God came alive to you
Mm-hmm.
when it was positioned in a way that
Mm-hmm.
you could see and feel and taste.
Yes. Yes. And I have such nostalgia for more tradition. I love, like, I can still smell the way that church smelled that my parents took me to. The reverence and the beauty and the awe in the sacraments and the elements. Like, that's something I still cherish, to be honest. I think is so sweet. But I also know that there's just so much more. There's just so much more. Yeah.
So is that when you began your spiritual transformation
Yes.
from...
Yes. So I thought that church looked a certain way and that was the best it would ever get. I was like, man, is this like the best it gets? Ugh, no wonder people don't really want to do this. It's really not that, like, fun. I don't know. I guess and then once the Lord had shifted my heart enough and things were aligned up in his timing, now it was time to introduce the reality of Jesus and the reality of the relationship and the relationship opportunity. Because I don't know, I had not, it was just always like more about like religion, you know, versus the relationship part. So that's what I feel like we got to experience, and I got to experience at our church. And so what that looked like was just like super sweet people that I remember being at church and seeing people being like, wow, they're really into this and they're really happy. And oh, they look like they love their husband a lot and their kids a lot. And I remember being like so attracted to like that aroma or that joy that I could literally just like taste. And I was like, I want what that woman has. How did she get like that? Like, it was just so curious to me. And I eventually, so that was like May of 2017. That fall, I found myself in a Bible study, reading the Bible for the very first time. I owned Bibles in the past, but like actually reading and studying and answering questions, sitting at a table with like really seasoned saints that I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. I cried like so much. Like it was nuts. We were studying the book of Mark, and I just remember like it was just crazy. I don't know. I guess it was just like the Holy Spirit had just like fallen on me, and it was like the best. And so again, it was like I was going to church, reading. Now I'm in a Bible study. But I was still kind of living my old life still. Like we're still sort of doing that life.
Yeah, it's like a baton handoff in a relay race.
It's the worst.
You're still holding on to the baton from the old way when the new way is trying to grab it and go. It's a transitional time.
Great analogy. Yeah, so I had like, there were many Sundays where I just like came hungover and really felt a lot of shame and really, it was awful. So there was just a lot of tension in that transition time. And I remember our Bible study leader at the time, somehow we ended up meeting, and she was telling me how she told me she didn't drink anymore or something. And I was just like, how do you do that? Like, how do you do that? And it was just really interesting. And so as we developed this relationship, I was like, again, seeing someone who I was like, wow, like I want what that person has and whatever that is. And so the Lord used her to show me and to sort of mentor me in the beginning, that would later usher me into a fast.
Yeah, but that's a challenge. I mean, because you've been drinking for quite a while, and it's like, okay, I want what she has, as long as that does not mean that I can't have a glass or two of wine every night.
Yes.
So how do you do that? That's the question. It sounds like you were asking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That is the question I was asking. And I felt really stuck because while I was on this path, my husband was just still kind of like, he was coming to church, going along, but things started to really heat up over here with this affair that I was having with this other man named Jesus.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was like, I mean, it was just sort of a lot for him, I'm sure. And I know I can still be a lot for him, but he's great and gets me. But, so yeah, I'm like continuing to go to Bible study, and I'm learning and then I find myself like, well, why is he not doing this too? Right. So I was like starting to be kind of like judgy about why is this not happening for him right now too. But I had a lot of people praying for me, especially this one mentor, and it took a series of events to finally get me to ask the Lord for help. So I'm at a friend's house, and we have like our kids there and our friends, and our kids are really little at the time. And again, like I knew the Lord was after me for this, and for me to consider like just stopping. So it was one of those parties where I did not eat much, and at least not till really late. And by then, like, I have no idea like really what my kids are doing. I have no idea like what the other kids are doing with my kids. Like, it just was not a very responsible look. And we're trying to get finally get going. We're trying to leave, and like I couldn't even get our kids out of the house. Like, I just had to like get myself to the car. So my husband's trying to like, round them up. We get home and it's late now, and I'm giving the kids a bath, and they are so tired and so upset, and they're just in a really like, they're just, it was really difficult. And I just remember, what I do remember is how I just screamed at them and just was so inebriated, and just, it was awful. And what I do remember is going into our master bedroom and into our bathroom, and just looking in the mirror, and the lights are kind of off. And I just remember looking in the mirror and just being like, Lord, I need you to take this pain away from me. And like, this is not how I want to live. And that was just like a really tough moment. The next day, what I remember is, well, going back in that moment, I remember the Holy Spirit reminding me that there have been other people that have struggled in these same ways with addiction and how it just destroys families. And what makes you think that you're not susceptible to this too? Like, I'm really naive and really prideful in if I don't think that this could happen to me too. And I had just literally never thought about that before. I had never thought about the reality of this really getting a grip on me.
You just thought you were kind of a social drinker, and this is just kind of what we do. It's a daily thing, and it's going to start making dinner now, so I'm going to pour a glass of wine, and that's going to be it. And then, hey, I'm going to have one with dinner, and get the kids to bed. We'll have another one, and and that was just
that was my routine.
And you hadn't come to grips with the idea that was borderline addiction and about to be a problem. Correct.
Yeah, because I was kind of, when I was like first introduced to Bible study and stuff, I was considered what we would call gray area drinking. And so I was very sober curious before that point. So I had found like other people on social media that had related to that concept of gray area drinking, like the bottom didn't fall out, like for them to stop. And that,
so gray area drinking means what you're describing, right?
Yeah. So to me, it was like no one got a DUI, no one went to jail, no one got hurt. You wouldn't look at me and say like, yeah, Saralyn has a problem.
She's clearly an alcoholic, right? Yeah,
yes.
You would never.
No.
Yeah.
And so, but it was one of those things where like, was there enough in the house? Was it cold? Was there enough to get me through the weekend? It just took up all this headspace, and so much of my behavior like revolved around it, or the culture that it was involved around.
But if you didn't, what would be your anxiety level if there were none in the house?
Right. Oh, it was,
that kind of thing.
Yes, it was like that. It would, and I couldn't really imagine like alone time with my husband without it. Like we would put the kids down and like,
that's what we do.
Yeah. And so it was like that. There's this romanticized part to it that I thought just like came with being married and came with, I deserved it. You know, the mommy culture of like, I deserve this. Like, you cannot enjoy your kids without this.
It's how we unwind.
Yes. Oh, man, that is
All
such
of
a
it.
lie.
All of it.
Yeah. So I was just, again, like I was just being fed and choosing to, you know, justify like why I did what I did. And don't we do that a lot?
You know how many millions and millions of people in the Western world are in that place at this moment.
Right. Yeah. And
so this is a really important conversation and a really cool one because you are not there anymore.
Right.
So how did God take you out of some place that you not only didn't think you could get out of, but not sure you really wanted to get out of?
Right. Well, and that's a good point because I thought, and this is maybe jumping ahead, but like I would often operate from a place before Jesus. It is always going to be this way. Your parents were like this, your grandparents were like this, etc. I just thought this is how it is and this is how I am, and like that's how it's always going to be until like Jesus. So, okay. Yeah, so we'll get to that. But okay, so I have this encounter with the Lord in my bathroom. And, you know, the kids get put to bed, you know, everybody's safe and fine. I wake up the next day and I have a conversation with my husband on the couch. And we go downstairs and I just look at him and I just say like, oh, I don't think alcohol is good for me anymore. And it was like such a scary like thing to say because I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And I was just like, I think I'm going to like give it a break. And there had been many times where I had approached my week like, okay, not going to drink this week. You know, Tuesday comes and you have a stressful day and that's your Tuesday. But this was different. And I don't remember what he said, but he was like incredibly supportive and sweet. So it's really interesting. I'm just putting this together, but what was really cool and how kind the Lord is that we were coming up on Lent. So Lent is a time of prayer and fasting leading up to Easter. So Ash Wednesday was on Valentine's Day that year. And I went to a church service with my mother, who has been alcohol-free for many years now. Praise God. She did not know what was going on between me and the Lord at the time. And so I go to church and it was clear that the Lord was like inviting me into a fast from this. And it was like, oh, cool. Because if anyone asks me about it, I can just tell them I'm giving this up for Lent. So, that's how it started. That's how it started. And the Lord was so sweet. Like I was just the cool things that happened in those 40 days. The first 2 weeks were really rough. It was like dousing myself in lavender before bed and like taking baths, which I mean, like I never did any like things like that before. I was irritable. I was kind of resentful that my husband could do this, but like I wasn't. And that, so all that was real, and is real. But over time, I just was like, I was sleeping. I was feeling my feelings. I was like laughing hard, and like the hardest I have probably had in my adult life, and crying. I wasn't rushing bedtime with my kids. I started having like really cool creative thoughts for business ideas. So it was just really, really cool. So then we get to Easter Sunday, and my husband's like, well, what are you going to do? Because normally we are like, we're going to go to a big brunch, and there's going to be, you know, mimosas and Chardonnay, and we'll watch the kids run around the, you know, with the Easter egg hunt, and it's just this event. And I just was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Because I think he's kind of on standby, like, what is, you know. And we go to church, and I just remember the Lord saying, what if we took this one day at a time? Oh, no. It was so sweet. And I was like, okay, like, let's try that approach. So I get home, and that's what I tell my husband. And a few weeks ago, it was 7 years. So
You haven't had a drink since that time?
yeah. I know.
So the fast ended on Easter Sunday. Usually when you break the fast,
Right.
you break the fast.
Yeah.
And you said you felt like the Lord said, let's take this one day at a time.
Together. Like,
What do you mean you felt like he said that? How did you get to that? How did you hear that?
I was just in the church sanctuary, and I just was almost distracted by, what are we going to do? Like, what's the next move? Like, what are we doing? And I just felt like it was just this gentle whisper. And it was like, what if we did this one day at a time together?
So instead of quitting drinking forever.
Yeah, like putting a hard, like, anything on it. It was
Let's just
like,
do today.
and I just like, I still feel like I saw like him ask me to like hold his hand, like, in that. So I was like, okay, I can do that.
So you felt
Yes.
God take an approach to you about this topic that was, take me by the hand and we're just going to go slow together. Rather
Yeah.
than what we might consider to be the judgmental
Yeah.
hammer coming down if you
Yes.
sin again. Once again, you're a sinner, you're a disappointment,
Yeah.
you've gotten it wrong, beaten you to death type guilt thing that the world tries to convince you that that's who
Yes.
God is. You break his rules, you go to hell.
Right. No, it's so gentle and like such an invitation. Like, I want to do this with you. And you're not alone. That's very sweet.
That's my experience with God as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more of that.
Yes.
And almost none of condemnation.
Same.
You know, the woman at the well, story in Scripture around that, and I'm sorry, not the woman at the well, the one caught in adultery that appears to have been added later, and so there's a lot of folks that don't believe that that was actually in the original text in John.
Yep.
That's fine. But one of the cool things about that, it's the one that says, "He who among you who is without sin, let him cast the first stone." But the most beautiful part to me is at the end when everybody's cleared out. Mm-hmm. She's like, he's like, who's left to accuse you? And she's like, no one, Lord, or to condemn you. He said, neither do I condemn you. Now go and sin no more. And a lot of times we think of God as a God of condemnation against breaking his rules. And I think there's discipline that takes place, but I think he's, in my experience, much more of a on your team.
Yeah.
Let's do this together.
Yeah.
I've got something better for you.
100%.
If you'll just kind of roll with me on this thing. But there's this ability for you to, someone who did not have experience with God growing up, to be able to discern hearing him. You felt like that was him, not you just saying, hey, Saralyn, don't beat yourself up on this thing. It's okay.
Right.
Let's just take this one day at a time. You felt like that was God speaking to you. What's the difference between Saralyn patting herself on the back and trying to boost herself up in a challenging situation and God doing it?
Oh, because Saralyn would have said, we gotta pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and do this. And it's they're harsher, harder lines that I would have probably drawn for myself. I would have never been as gentle with myself. I would have been much more black and white. I would have been probably a lot more condemning to myself. The whole let's try this one day at a time thing, like that's not at all who I was. Like, I wasn't capable of that concept then at all.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, because you're an athlete and a competitor and all this other stuff, and it's like, hey, if you're going to make the team, you got to put the work in. You got to do this. Is how we do it.
Correct.
Not let's take it one day at a time. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of people watching this right now that are saying, wait a minute. Okay, so am I not supposed to drink at all?
Oh.
It's like, wait a minute. Jesus drank wine.
Right. Oh, right.
In your experience, yes, Jesus did drink wine.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you're saying that drinking is a sin.
No.
What is it? Because I think it sounds like you got to a place where you felt like alcohol was blocking you from God.
Yeah.
At least a fuller experience of him.
Yes.
And he gave you the ability to see that during this 40-day fast, at least bits and pieces of it.
Yep. How
does alcohol separate us from God and become sinful?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think just anything that you put before him is the definition of an idol. And I was definitely putting not just alcohol, but like the lifestyle of it before him. So you could put insert blank for your thing there. Really it's not just alcohol, but anything that you really put before him. And in my experience, my situation was that I didn't really, I know people who can have one glass of wine and they're totally fine. And they're totally like, I can, put it down. But like, if a bottle is open, like, why not finish it was really my thought. And some. And so I didn't really have like, the moderation thing too. Like I wasn't good at that either. I tried that.
Yeah.
I always thought it was like really cool and I still do think it just sort of baffles me that there are people that can do that. And I'm like, I was not one of those people. I was not someone that could, just have one glass of wine or whatever at a party or an event. So.
Yeah. And I think about it from a dependent standpoint.
Right.
Is it something you turn to solve something?
Yes. And
versus turning to God.
Right. So I was, a lot of times just numbing out. So whether that was the alcohol or smoking, that was usually, if I'm being honest, that was often the route to just numb out, be distracted from the reality of like my situation at the time.
Yeah, that's kind of the case for most people, right? That's what it's kind of what it's for.
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
In that space when I was drinking.
So what happened when you sort of recognized that you had officially stopped? What was life like then?
Well, there was still like this tension sometimes like between my husband and me, because it was like, okay, like I'm cool with her like getting to know Jesus, but now like our lifestyle is changing because her choices have changed. So when the day after Easter, it's like, okay, so let's see how that had been 40 days. At 80 days, I remember I started to tell people, because it was like a very private thing between me and the Lord for that time. And there had been certain people that I wanted to call personally. And I had very supportive friends that were like, wow, that's cool. Like almost like, man, I wish I could do that too. But like, that sounds really supernatural to me right now. And then I had people that just like weren't supportive and weren't excited. And that was sort of a bummer too. But so we would be in social situations and I would not drink. And I was like sort of self-conscious about it. But I think one thing that's sort of like a relief to know is that when you're in situations socially, like people really don't care if you're drinking or not. They're just worried about whether they have their glass filled up or not. And that was actually, I was really self-conscious about that. But it's like, no, people aren't actually worried about what you're drinking or not.
They're worried about what they're drinking.
Yeah. They want to make sure they got theirs, And so I was like, that's and again, it's like through sort of this like sober curious community that I kind of, so it was never like an AA track. And I know that has worked and it's an amazing program and it saves lives and it's it works for a reason. But for me, that's the Lord had me sort of navigate this differently through different relationships, through people, through social media. And there were a couple people I knew in my community at home that were privately going through something similar, and the Lord like would just like drop them in my lap like an angel. And I could like, and this one girl, even to this day, like we still talk about, you know, how good God is for delivering us from that. So just kind of kept sort of walking it out. And it was, I would start sharing more about it on social media and stuff. And it was crazy. Like the Lord would bring women to me that suffered silently in the church, actually a lot. That
Sure.
So these were women of faith that knew Jesus, but they silently struggle with this one thing. And that's sort of been like the flock that the Lord has had, you know, for me. And that's been awesome.
How are you different?
I think because I did not have a rock bottom moment, but certainly could have. Like there were many times where I could have gotten in a lot of trouble because I was and am pursuing Jesus through it. That he's the reason and he's the one that gets all the credit. And I think because I genuinely have made myself available to the people that he has brought to me. I don't know that it's so much like that I'm that different. It's just I want to hold space for people in that human connection. And the Lord's allowed me to be able to do that. I don't know that I am the best to answer that.
Yeah.
Too. I don't know.
Well, you know, I
don't know.
I go in, for me, when, let's say, I'm choosing one night to have a glass of wine. When I choose that, I know that I'm like, quote unquote, off duty.
Yes. Okay. Uh-huh.
For me.
Yeah.
Whereas nights where I don't, I look forward to like a scripture and prayer time later on, or if there's ministry-ish related, even if it's a Friday night, right? I get a text from someone around Deliverance or some other thing. I am sharp, ready, alert. I'm not off duty.
Right.
And I'm thankful for that. And so it's my availability.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
To God.
Yes. That's so good.
For me. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of people. It's like, okay, it has been a long week and, you know, I'm going to take a day or two. And the second I take that first sip, the closed sign is up for me. And I know that. And so there are times where, you know, I don't take that first sip because I don't want that closed sign up. And
oh, that's really good.
Yeah. Did you experience that?
I want the doors open all the time, always vacant. And like, and I want that for him too. Like I'm like, sometimes I don't want to drink as much caffeine because it might affect my sleep and that might affect my dreams. And he might not be able to like get through to me as clearly. That's how I think about stuff sometimes. And absolutely, like I pray that he brings people to me that need him. And I want to be on the front lines, like ready to go. And so it's really an honor, gosh. And not to mention like my family, like my kids, my husband, like good grief. Like there's nothing like more than I want than to like be present and, snuggling on the couch watching a movie with them, like, and our dog. It's just the best. Well, and I think when you asked me the question about like what was some of the after, it was like I was so worried that like I was not going to be fun anymore, and like I was not going to be funny, and like that I wasn't going to be someone wanted to be around. Like, isn't that sad? These were just, again, like lies that I know that the enemy used to try to like prevent that from that abstinence from happening. But
a lot of times when we are in the middle of things, it's a little more difficult for us to see what God is doing in it. But now that you've been 7 years away from it, I mean, can you look back on it now? Do you look back on it now as like, hey, here's how I did that? Or do you look back on it and say, God brought me out of that 100%, and here's how he did it, and I can see it now at a distance.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, 100%.
How did God bring you out of where you were to where you are now?
Well, you mentioned John 15. There's a lot of pruning in that chunk of scripture. So once this was my new like reality and having to navigate it, again, I had a pretty good, we were in some social situations and groups, and the Lord was very clear about like, I'm not sure that that's really bearing fruit for you and your family. So we're going to trim that. But then I'm going to bring you into like a church community that looked like a small group and a life group, which that stuff, like that concept was like so foreign to me. And I'm like, what do you mean but at the same time I was like, oh my gosh, like, you mean these are people that are pursuing Jesus too, and they're going to like pray for me, and they're going to pray for my kids, and they're going to bring us like a chicken when someone's not feeling great. And, so I was like, oh, this sounds great, like, but is this real? I was kind of skeptical too. So that was like a big thing. It's like, how did we spend our time? And the Lord literally like introduced new people to us. A year after I got sober, I think my husband was finally like, I think she's serious about all this. Like, I think he kind of wanted to wait it out to see like, is she really for real with all this? And like a year later, he joined a Bible study for men that he's still a part of, which has been like a massive blessing to our family, and it's just been awesome. Some of my best friends now are, and the people that I do life with now they're just like better people that I could ever imagine or ask for to be around and to text and talk to every day, and their kids and their husbands. It's like, ooh, the best. And in the ministry that he's called me into now, which is prayer ministry. And I mean, I would have never picked that for myself.
What do you mean? What are you doing?
The prayer ministry that I'm involved in, I think it really started once, that the big edit happened with drugs and alcohol. So he continues to like bring people that need inner healing, that need like the story and the reality of our walk together. I just have experienced true inner healing, generational healing, deliverance myself. And I just want to give what's been freely given to me with other people. And so that's where I find my passion, and like all I want to do is, and that's a big reason why I'm even here today, is because if something I say about him like will help other people understand the reality of Jesus too, and to open their eyes and to have their heart softened towards Jesus, then I want to do that. But yeah, we could definitely go into more details about the actual prayer ministry.
I think we should. And here's why I say that. Our episodes are conversations with everyday people who are experiencing God. Mm-hmm. How are you experiencing, or have you experienced God?
So I've had the deep privilege to have been sort of apprenticing under a couple women, one in particular who's a deacon at our church, and she has really just taken me under her wing and taught me so much about spiritual warfare, the authority we have in being children of God. And I got the experience to receive prayer. So being on the receiving end of two people simply tearing the roof off of the house and picking me up and lowering me to the feet of Jesus. And you don't really know how to properly thank someone after that experience.
Can you tell me about the experience?
Okay.
I'm going to ask you that question.
I know. I'm just like, ooh, this is good. So people will be like, what do you mean? Like prayer appointments, healing, like inner healing. What is that? And I try to explain it to them. And so I feel like the Lord's prepared me for this question, but it's like exactly that. I think it's in Mark 2, at least once in the Gospels there, but where they're lowering the paralytic. And so you're a person that's in pain and you're just in a place where like nothing else is really working. The therapies, the this, the that, and I'm going to go to two prayer ministers who have a heart for this. And so my first time going into any kind of prayer like this was actually through a generational healing. So that, what is that? What is that? You may ask, but after I had explained my whole kind of life story to my mentor, she asked me, she's like, have you ever heard of generational healing? And I was like, no, what is that? What does that mean? And she's like, well, I think you're a candidate for it. And I was like, okay. So she explained it to me, and basically there's a geneagram, so it looks like a family tree, and you kind of identify the people in your family and the different blessings and non-blessings that you see a pattern in. And so those were identified during this ceremony. And I was sort of like taken back by some of the unfortunate consistencies. And so there's prayers involved. We took communion. It was during COVID, so I remember us not really being able to interact with each other too closely. And I remember feeling like I was inside of a womb, and like I couldn't really hear anything. It was sort of muffled like this, and I had just this, and I was crying a whole lot. And so once I took that piece of paper that had all the curses on it, balled it up and put it at the altar, and it was burned. And so that was like taking a stake in the ground and saying, like, I don't want these things to be passed on to me or my children or to the generations to come, in Jesus' name. So that was the first experience I had with generational healing. And then I've also done my own inner healing prayer sessions since then, when with other prayer ministers that I can talk about too, but I don't know if you had any on that.
Here's the thing. Generational curses are real. All right.
Yeah.
So we don't need to beat around the bush around those things, right? There are things like alcoholism that you can notice in your family line. Is like, how is that? Is that just in the culture all around, or why is it coming down in this particular line? You can find marital infidelity, same sort of thing. You can look back. It's like, okay, that's just, why am I tempted with this? And you look backwards, it's like, wait a minute, his dad was that way, and so was his granddad and his great-grandfather. And you think, wow, what a coincidence that is. And then you go to Scripture in the Old Testament, Exodus and Deuteronomy, and it talks about generational curses, okay? And you can debate it all you want to, but there it sits, and here I'm sitting here looking at my own lineage in these things. And what can happen is we can take authority there.
Yes.
Since we are in that line, we can repent for our ancestors.
Correct.
And we can cancel this thing and get rid of it. And you think, okay, well, that's just a neat little mental strategy that's convincing you to stop doing something that you could convince yourself to stop doing through other means. It's not actually a generational curse. And I guess you could debate a thing like that. But I've seen it happen too many times where it inexplicably was broken through that process. And I bet most people watching this could look and identify something in their sort of family line that seems to run from generation to generation that's not genetic.
Right.
And if you think this notion of generational curses is primitive, I can understand that. Until you have experience with it. Right.
And kind of like going back to what I had said earlier, I thought, this is just how it is. This is, I'm always going to be this way. My family is always going to be this. But until Jesus. And I had no idea that there was even like this concept or like a way out.
Right.
Like,
it's just how it is.
I was like, wow.
It's who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was humbling.
Yeah. So it's who I am. It's just who I am is a lie that you've been fed. Right. I hear it all the time, almost every day.
Yeah.
That's just how I am. Well, no, it's not. And there's something that can be done about that, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But the question I asked you earlier was, how have you experienced God? if there is really no such thing as generational curses, and it's just kind of a sort of psychological strategy that therapists employ to get people past something that they don't think they get past, then there really is no God, right? There's no need for God if we've just got a good little psychological technique that we can layer onto something like this to give you quote unquote freedom.
Yeah.
Do you have any account that says, I hear you, but
right,
here's why I believe I have experienced God, not just employed a technique?
I can tell you about how I have experienced this with someone that we were praying for. And this was during an inner healing session with a woman and her husband. And so we were praying about his back or something like this. And there was this moment where she was able to forgive her mother-in-law for something. And this was, again, just not related to why they came in. But because she was able to get to a place where she was able to forgive someone, it actually affected her husband, in that session and in that meeting. So there's some kind of encounter that happened that I saw that happened, I guess, in the spiritual realm, that and maybe it had something to do with the fact that they're one flesh, that there was some kind of transaction that happened through the wife forgiving in forgiveness, for the wife to be able to forgive the mother-in-law, and something happened that helped his back. It was just crazy.
So he was healed?
Yes.
After his wife was able to forgive her mother-in-law or his mom?
Yes.
He experienced a physical healing.
Yes.
In that moment.
Mm-hmm. That's one example that comes to mind when I think of just being in prayer ministry. And sometimes and I'm just saying this, but sometimes when you're in these sessions, you forget a lot of the details, or what you have said or what you've prayed for. And I don't know, maybe that's just the Holy Spirit's protection or whatever. But for me, when I experienced generational healing for the first time, I remember seeing a very long list of occult practices and New Age stuff. So Ouija boards, tarot cards, crystals, and yoga. So yoga was on the list, and I looked at it and I was like, why is yoga on this list? And it kind of made me a little inflamed. I was like, I'm not putting this on. I'm not acknowledging this list with this on it, or I'm not acknowledging this part. And I remember going through the rest of the process, and after that ceremony was finished, that was in September. It wasn't long until October came, and I started to get a real check in my spirit over Halloween out of nowhere. And then the Lord started opening my eyes to the truth about yoga, which I may be getting ahead of myself in some of this, but I was a certified yoga instructor at the time for a Christian yoga school. And
a Christian yoga school.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was
there's a topic to debate right there anyway, right. Which we probably are going to do here in a minute.
Right. So after this generational healing, things just, I don't know. It was very like, okay, I thought, why didn't something happen like this? Right. I was like, well, shouldn't it just happen really quickly? I don't know what it is, but I was like, I didn't really feel like, different, but over time. So I'm, at home, I'm leading a Bible study. I think it's over Zoom because we're still in COVID. And I see these, my husband starts putting up Halloween decorations, and I just started getting like sick. I just started feeling like physically not well. And this was like just 2 weeks maybe. And I was like, I don't want anything to do with like participating in putting this stuff up. And I'm talking like our house has columns, and we had these like zombies, like ugly stuff, like wrapped around our trees. And I was just like, I don't know about all that. That was kind of yucky. And we ended up getting in an argument about it because I was like, I don't really want anything to do with that. I'm sort of just, anyway. And that was not normal for me. So my behavior in response to that was like interesting to me. And then I had a sweet friend call me one day and said, hey, can I bring you like a coffee? And I'm on my way to Bible study or something like that. And I think she had seen like a picture posted of the house online. And
of your house?
Of my house, yeah, decorated.
With the Halloween decorations up? Okay.
Mm-hmm. So she came by the house, and she was like, and I knew, and when she pulled up to the driveway, I was like, shame. Like I felt shame that she was going to like see my house the way it looked. And I just remember thinking like, oh gosh, I know why she's here. And she brought me my latte, and she was like, why do you have these demons on your house? And I was like, oh my gosh. She's like, because, and this is a friend of mine that can like discern spirits. She's like, because I've seen this one before. And she pointed at one of the 4. And I was like, and then I just lost it. I'm crying, blah, blah, blah. Like it was just, she ends up like so sweet. Like she anoints, like she brought oil, like she brought, did all the things, like came to the house. We like prayed through the home and got rid of all that stuff, pulled it down. She helped me take it down. But right after the generational healing, my mentor said, you need to, because she knew about some like occult things that were in my house that had maybe been passed down to me.
Like what?
Like a chakra wand. So it had different crystals of each like chakra that was actually given to my daughter. It was in her room. And my mentor told me weeks ago, she's like, you need to get that stuff out of your house. And I just like I like delayed it, didn't do it. So when my friend came to my house about like the Halloween zombies, I've got like zombies piled in the back of my car and then I've got like this big box of rocks, driving to the dump to like take all this stuff. And I'm just like, Lord, like I'm like, just get all this crap out of here that like perverts my relationship with you. And so kind of going back to your question a few minutes ago, like some of the residual came slowly and later, just because I was, like, things just started coming off and like being revealed. And that happened sort of like a slow drip, after. It's crazy.
Have a whole conversation around Halloween and those things. She's like, hey, well, come on, guys. It's just, we're having a little fun. It's for the kids and scary decorations and all that stuff. And, when you come into rich connection with God and he opens your eyes, the culture says that we're just intolerant fundamentalists.
Yeah, I know.
And good grief, let's just have some fun here. This is a fun thing. And but when your eyes are opened, it's not that we just want to impose all these no fun rules. We had that on I've always been uncomfortable with Halloween. I never understood why we celebrate evil, essentially, and darkness and monsters and all these things. And but then I looked at I got the decorations out one year, and I'm like, we are literally, if I had to, in my mind, bring about a demon, it would look like this thing that I'm about to hang from my front porch. I mean, why are we hanging demons in front of our house? And so, in order to sort of appease the culture with Halloween, I mean, we still have little orange lights on the sidewalk, and I think there's some spiders or something. But we decided to get rid of the demons, and we felt like that was, I don't know, we felt the lifting from that. We've since all gone through the house and
you mean your family personally? Yeah, good.
Here,
cool.
And have gone through the house looking for things that are spirituality based that are not of God, alternatives to God for good fortune, for peace, for anything of the spiritual nature that's not of God. And we just, it's like, you have no other gods before me. Okay, I take that seriously.
Yes.
And and you're not going to convince me that I'm just being a hardline fundamentalist when I stand up for my God in my house.
Amen.
So that's a whole nother conversation that we could have right there. It's really good. Back to the alcohol thing.
Okay.
You know, I feel like you describe God gently taking you out of this.
Yeah.
And for people who are stuck in these places, and they know they're stuck, but they still enjoy it and that sort of thing. Not full-blown addiction, at least they don't think so, but I don't know, maybe trying to take it away from them, it might have a different reaction. But people who are like, I can get out of this? Really? How would you coach someone who is interested in transitioning out of what has become, as you've discovered, sort of this deception around alcohol or other substances? How would you coach them?
That's such a big question, and I don't want what I'm going to say to sound like cliche, but like, we have to pray and ask the Lord for help if this is something that you've seen not work out well in your family line, number one. Number two, like, if you have enough humility to recognize that, like, I could be susceptible to this too, and that I have like a genetic disposition for some of this stuff. I feel like those things have already taken place before the Lord brings them to me. So, for someone who is in that place where they're really ready or have asked the Lord for help, I would just tell them that it is so much better His way. Like, and all I can say is that there's so much more freedom on this side of things when you're doing life with Him. It's not so much that I would be coaching someone as it is that I am just continuously trying to point someone to the one who is the coach, and that He's the one that's that's got all the answers. I also think too, like anybody who is like a friend of mine or is in my circle, they know a lot of my story, and they know that the fruit that has come to my life just because I love him. I have fallen in love with him, and I believe and trust that he has my best interests. So I want to like obey to the best of my ability. He is the way, he is the truth, he is the life. And I just continue to try to point people to that truth and to him.
How did it happen for you? What was the moment? What was the ingredient that you feel like that you went from I was hard down this road to, or these tracks to the tracks got switched?
He made it painful. Or I made it painful. It got painful.
Didn't you say
so
you reached
painful.
out to him though? Didn't you?
Yeah.
So painful that you
Yeah.
may have had a demonic encounter of screaming at your kids on a drunken night.
Yes,
night
of course.
Late. And it sounded like that night
that was, yeah.
you actually called out to him.
Yeah. And that's, yes, out of desperation and out of a dark place and out of just like, I'm tired. Like I'm just tired and I don't know what else to do. And I'm weary and Lord, I might have needed to be impaired to really like even ask him that way, you know? But it doesn't matter to him, you know, like he knew my heart it as well. So
sometimes it takes us crossing some lines that we hope we never cross.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
To realize where we've gotten ourselves to and that we are stuck and can't get out. And the only thing that's going to get us out is him.
Yeah, I was scared.
So why does God allow things like that to happen? It could be because that's the only place that you're going to look up and reach up to him for help in true desperation.
Yes.
Sounds like that's what you did.
That was me. Yep.
And if I'm not mistaken, if you look back on it now, you didn't have another drink. From that day on.
I also believe not only did he take that away from me, that pain is what my specific request was. I believe that I experienced deliverance in that moment too.
In that moment.
Yes, because I didn't ever drink again. It's not that I didn't want to, like I maybe craved it physically a little, but and I mourned. There was grief that came with the person who I was before. But there's a scene, you know, in The Chosen in the first season when Mary Magdalene's at the bar and he puts his hand on her and then he calls her it outside. She's outside and he calls to her and all she can say is that, like, you know, when people ask, because I know she's this like new person now, it's like, you know, I was one way before and I'm one way after or something. And it's like, I relate a lot to that scenario, because there was just like no going back. And I feel like a lot of times when people hear the word deliverance, it's like you think of like the sensational, scary stuff, but it was like so like sweet and gentle and this like, you know, hand holding, but also like, I don't know, just this presence and this encounter, like for, especially during those days of like the fasting. And then, you know, even after, and even to now, like I don't desire that at all. And there's some kind of like deep compassion that I have for those that I know and love that are still stuck in it. And I'm just like, he took this from me, and I know he can take it from you too. And I think that's another reason why, like, I'm so passionate about prayer ministry, is because I want to help other people have the same kind of encounter, if the Lord chooses to use me that way.
Yeah. So Christian yoga.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Christian yoga and Christian yoga earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's a point of controversy. How did you get into yoga? Is it just from an athletic background?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So 2004, I started my yoga practice. And so that was just something cool I wanted to try. And I'm like in my 20s or whatever. And it wasn't the like primary workout, but it was like a supplementary thing. But it was like the sweetest group of ladies. And it was in this like attic of this one building. And it was just like so relaxing and sweet. And I just thought it was really cool. And I had I had never done it before. And I just really fell in love with it because I feel like it challenged me in new ways. Instead of going like hard and fast with a lot of the training that I did growing up, it was, let's try to slow things down and breathe and mobility work and that kind of thing. So I felt like it would just be like a nice complement to what I was accustomed to.
Yeah.
Yep. And so as I was, my husband and I were married at the time, but I became really good at it. And I was like good at it as in like I was actually able to master poses or asanas, sequences. And I just really thought it was awesome. And I just thought it was like, I thought the culture of it was kind of cool. And again, not having any idea like about really where yoga started or came from or any of that stuff. I just thought it was kind of a cool Eastern practice that, you know, made its way over here. And I loved the quiet that it brought to me and just helped me slow down. Yeah.
I think that's what
Yeah.
most people would say
Are seeking in it.
is
Yeah.
the appeal
Mm-hmm.
of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you were good at it,
Mm-hmm.
and good to the point where you said that you began to become an instructor. Is that right?
So it was, so the style I did was mainly like a hatha style, which is what we see in America a whole lot, at like your YMCA or whatever. But I ended up getting into warm classes where a style called Ashtanga was taught. And so that is mainly different sequences like choreography. Once you mastered those asanas, then you went on to from an A series to B series, C, so and so on. So, but you kind of had to like master these like different sequences before you moved on. And so I was really into that as well. And a guy locally taught these classes. And I mean, it was like most Saturdays I was going into these 2-hour hot classes. And it was sort of because I think you had a series to master, you kind of became competitive with yourself and the other people around you. And so there was something to it that felt a little more I guess just competitive. I don't know how, and you're not supposed to be that way at all, like with this practice. But to me, I was like, oh, I got to try to like get to the, next level or whatever. And so that I did for a long time, and I never mastered like I never got past like the first series. Anyway, I then, again, came in as we started having kids. I kind of fell out of being able to go so consistently. And then once we got into church, I would still sometimes go to a local studio here and there. But as my faith started becoming more like primary in my life, I just kind of did secular yoga less. And then as I became sober, I was starting to like feel my feelings. My workouts were like amplified because I wasn't waking up already behind from feeling sluggish and hungover, even if I just, it was like my body was like charged and ready to go. And so I'd say like in the first 6 months, we take a girls trip out of town and we go to a hot yoga studio. And I was like, man, this would be so cool. Like, but if it was just for Jesus, like, I don't like all the like chanting and Sanskrit words that are spoken over you. And, wouldn't that be cool, And it was like right away, I see something in my news feed about Christian yoga. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, is this really a thing? And it definitely is a thing. So I was like, oh, well, this is cool. Like, I'm going to check this out. So I did. And they had like a subscription where you could get online and like do classes through like their portal of different offerings. So I signed up and I was just like sold. I was like, this is great. I was like, I can like still move my body in this way, but they're focusing on Jesus. I was like, this is the best. I just thought it was like the coolest concept ever.
Were you aware before this time or around this time what yoga really was? Were you in tune to the fact that this was an ancient spiritual practice that was designed, the poses were designed as worshipful to Hindu gods, which are actually demons? And so you weren't aware of any of the background of what yoga really was and the Sanskrit chantings and all that stuff?
No, I didn't.
It was just a mindful exercise.
Yeah,
thing.
I guess, I mean, I say no, but like it also could have been willful ignorance too. And like, I want to do what I want to do. But the reality of like the spiritual piece was not on my radar at all at the time. So, yeah, I really had it. But what was interesting is I was not, to answer your question.
Yeah.
So, no.
Are you now?
Yes.
Okay.
So
that's good. Okay, that's interesting.
Yes, I am now.
But
it is very real.
I get you. You're a Jesus follower.
Yes, I'm new. Like, I'm newer to it. I'm new to sobriety, and I'm like,
there's a workout.
Feeling
you're
good.
An athletic background since you were a kid. And, and now you're into something that's healthy and beneficial and slower and enjoyable. And now there's a chance to layer Jesus onto that. That sounds great.
I was so energized over it. In fact, I was like, oh my gosh, like there's people that are instructors that do this and they teach at churches. I would love to do that.
That sounds right. Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, this would be it. And my husband God love him. He was just like, I don't know, babe, this sounds, I don't know. And, of course, like getting certified as a yoga instructor is not inexpensive. And, what's the time commitment and all these things. And so I fortunately, I ended up being able to convince him that this would be good and that I could do ministry this way. And this may be how like the Lord wants me to share the gospel. And oh my gosh, I just love it so much. And so he blessed me going forward with getting certified. And so a lot of that was online. I did have to go out west for a week for like in-person training. And I mean, when I was finished with the certification, I was teaching in 5 different churches, like 5 different days a week. I mean, it was busy. Yeah. So it was popular. And I had a lot of students.
What does Christian yoga look like?
So it looks like what a class would maybe look like is you'd have like praise and worship music. You would read a scripture over your class, and you would take them through, and depending on what kind of like style, and really depending on who your students were, like you would sort of curate it to their needs and what you advertised it for. So usually 60 minutes with maybe 45 of those minutes in actual movement poses and so forth. And then at the end, you would have some like relaxation time where you're just laying on the floor. And I would usually pray or read scripture over them. But that was kind of it. So it was very much like, let's focus on scripture, Jesus, sing, worship music, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what it would look like.
Okay. When did you come to the realization or understanding of what yoga is actually rooted in?
So it's interesting because I feel like I had little nudges sprinkled in throughout the experience. So, for example, I had friends that like would not come to my classes. And I'm like, well, that hurts my feelings. Like, why would they not want to support me or whatever? I didn't think too much about it, but I was like, And in our training, the instructors would be like, well, we don't have to say namaste at the end of class where you bow. And that basically means like the God in me honors the God in you. And I later was hired to be on staff with this yoga school. And part of my job was just marketing and sales a little bit. But I remember specifically talking to this one girl who was curious about certification. And we would message each other on Instagram. And she would send me messages. And she just had such tension with the concept of being a Christian yoga teacher. And I would say like, she would tell me why, and, the Hindu roots and all these things. And I would just be like, it's okay. Like, I get that you're wrestling with that, but like God's like, this is Jesus focused. This is not, it's not like that, and she would, and I wanted so much for her to like, just not worry about it. Just come over here and sign up to do it. But she just kept, like, gently, she would just say, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, and she would just come up with all these, like, reasons why. And you could tell she was wrestling with it. And so I remember through that conversation, I feel like the Lord even was, like, highlighting something for me and to pay attention to. And so I remember we were on the cusp of, like, COVID coming. Okay. So I go through my certification. I'm teaching a ton. Then I get hired. So I cannot actually teach as much because I'm working for the yoga school now. And so I'm not practicing and teaching as much. Then we go into everyone's got to stay home for COVID. So I'm now homeschooling a first grader and I have a toddler. And I'm maybe a year sober now. Okay. And so I'm like, oh gosh, like I can't even commit the time I have to, like, working, much less teaching or practicing yoga. And I'm not going to, if I have 30 minutes to work out, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do something else. And so we're homeschooling our kids. It's really hard at home. Like, we don't know what's going on with the world. And that's when that kind of happened throughout the summer. Then at the end of that summer, I was invited to teach yoga at someone's house, a private client, by her pool, like her own, like, friends, like, bi-weekly. So I'm like, oh, this must be the Lord's way of, like, calling me back into teaching again, because this woman's, like, invited me to come have like, with her Bible study, have a Christian yoga class at her house. And so I was like, this is so exciting. My kids are going back to school. Like, the world's getting back to normal. And so I had this friend I've never met. Like, we're, again, friends through, like, social media or something. And I was telling her about, and she's a Christian, and I was telling her about how excited I was about this opportunity to come back into the teaching and practicing yoga stuff. And she just said to me one day, she said, Saralyn, do you ever feel convicted about yoga? And I was like, no, not really. Why? And she was just like, I don't know. I think maybe we should just pray about it. And I was like, so offended. And I was like, ew, what? And so I was like, okay, well, we can pray about it. So we did. The next day, I have this class at this lady's house by her pool. And get everything to this woman's house. I'm getting unpacked. And all of a sudden, I don't want to take any of these mats or blocks or straps or any of this stuff out of my car. Like, I am, like, disgusted with what I'm about to do.
Really?
Crazy.
Why?
I believe it was because we prayed the day before, and that there was some transaction in the spirit with it. So I'm like, oh no, what is wrong with me? Like, what is happening? And so I have all this stuff, and I'm, like, carrying it up to the house, and I'm just like, I don't even want to be here. And so get there with all my stuff. And I have to remind you that weeks prior to this, I had just gone through the generational healing. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that was, like, just maybe 4 or 5 weeks prior. And then this happens. And I'm like, wait a second. Yoga was on that list. Why did I not want to circle it? Why did I not want to identify it? Why was I offended by this list having yoga on there. So we get to the lady's house and someone had a neck injury. And so I was like, oh, good. So we're all just going to y'all are just going to lay on the floor and I'm going to just pray over you. And we're not going to go through any sequences or anything. And we did that. And I could not get out of the house fast enough. So I did. And I left and I got home. And when I got home, I was like, I don't know what's going on. But for some reason, I ended up jumping on YouTube. And the first video that came up was why I left Christian yoga. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, what is happening to me right now? And so I listened to the video. She went through the same yoga school as I did. And I could not believe what I was hearing. But I was like, oh, this all makes sense. So in this YouTube video, the conversation that was going on, like I could not believe what I was hearing. And it was like that moment when I was like, oh gosh, like I can't do this anymore. And it was actually the first real experience I have ever had with repentance, which was really ugly and really beautiful all at the same time. So yeah, like I call my husband, I think he's playing golf and he's like, and I'm like hysterical and he's like, we can talk about this later. Like, let's just, so anyway, so from there, like I just took a deep dive into the truth, which is, where yoga originated, that it's a spiritual practice first, and there's physical benefits second, that, we have turned it into something different here in America. And it's like, that's where the deception is, I think, and how a lot of us have gotten kind of like, maybe scooped up in it. And when the reality of the spirit realm and spiritual warfare and the reality of darkness, and then you layer that on top of a practice like yoga, it was extremely eye-opening for me. And I believe it is very dangerous, especially for Christians.
So what's the problem with yoga?
So the problem with yoga is that when yoga has Hindu roots, and in the Hindu faith, I think it's like there's 300 million different gods. Like there's a whole lot. And the word yoga means to yoke. And the whole goal of yoga in the Hindu faith is really to yoke with the superior god, which I believe is Brahman. And so when you think about that perspective as a spiritual practice, and then you're over here as a Christian, when I think about the first commandment of you should not put any other gods before me, like that is a clear violation of the first commandment. So I guess that's where I see it, first of all, being a problem. So as you continue to practice yoga, these sequences that I talked about earlier are, they have different names, which are typically associated to other gods in the Hindu faith. So, and most of them are very unnatural, not anything that you would do, like just sitting on the floor and like trying to touch your toes, stretching. But it's almost this as you go about doing these series of poses or asanas, it's almost like this moving liturgy. I've heard it explained. Just like in some Christian churches, we have like the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed. The different sequences in movement are almost like this moving liturgy that is this attractive offering to those gods, which just opens doors to inviting them in. And that can be very dangerous for people.
Yeah, and when you discover in your search for spiritual reality that there aren't millions of other gods, there is only God, the one true God, and the enemy of the one true God.
Yeah.
As we've heard several times, there's on here, there's only two teams.
There is only two teams. Yeah.
And so if you think it's okay that you're actually, I'll kind of go along with this honoring of a, Hindu god because it's part of the thing. Well, I think what people who've become awakened to all of this and the whole thing is uncovered have said to me is you're actually honoring and opening the door to a demon, to the demonic.
Correct.
So an alternative to God that is spiritual in nature, that's not God, is the enemy of God.
Correct.
And so you are yoking, yoga to yoke, you are yoking yourself to the enemy of God, to the demonic.
Yep.
So what's the problem with yoga? That's the problem with yoga.
That's the problem with yoga, yes. Yes.
So when people say, I'm just trying to get, it's healthy. I'm just stretching. I'm not in my heart worshiping a demon.
Right.
Get real. I'm just doing an exercise.
I know it doesn't.
What do you say to that?
So my heart was like obviously never to put someone in that position, much less myself. But what I have learned is that it really doesn't matter what we think and what our heart's desire is, to them, to the demons. Like that all just does not matter, because because of the reality is that Satan masquerades like an angel of light all the time, and his job is to steal, kill, and destroy. And I have seen too many people that have started out on this, like, I'm just stretching, I'm just, my doctor recommended it, my back, like whatever. And they have just gone, so far away from their faith. They have just gone so far down this road into deep darkness and demonic oppression. And it's heartbreaking, like to have seen that over the years. And the fact that I might have had something to do with influencing someone at some point in my life to consider that, or to become certified in it too, and that's why I believe it's important to talk about this. Yeah. Because like I have said earlier, I was just, an athlete, had my own business, stay-at-home mom, was delivered from drugs and alcohol, and I just wanted to do something that felt good and helped other people get closer to Jesus. And it just was very naive of me.
Yeah, so that's what yoga is, and you are literally yoking yourself to the demonic.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with yoga, and people are like, okay, so I like the health benefits of yoga. So, but I'm a Jesus follower. So what's the answer to that? Christian yoga. We do a version of it that honors Christ. We still get to do similar stretching, or maybe it's the same, I don't know, but we're just going to say, instead of Brahman or whatever it is, we're going to acknowledge Jesus. Isn't that a great solution to this? What's the deception of Christian yoga?
I think for Christian yoga, it's just such an oxymoron. Like you can't just put a Christian name on something that has demonic roots. That's just as simple as it gets. And for people that ask about that, or ask about yoga in general, like I still am like a fan of like stretching and like I believe, physical therapy, massages, like things like that, like are all things that I feel like are safe to do. But it's just not something that you can just put a Christian label on and that makes the demonic factor go away.
Here's a question for you. When you were getting breadcrumbed into Christian yoga, did you feel like that was God showing you a path to be loyal to Christ and still do yoga?
I did. I don't know. I did. But again, I was still very newer to like my faith, newer to sobriety. And I have a feeling I'd like to think, had I been in that situation now, that I really would have consulted with some elders first and wise counsel.
Do you feel like you know God's voice more definitively now than you did back then?
Yes.
Then can you describe the difference between what it was that you felt was God's voice opening doors to Christian yoga and God's voice as you know it now as a more mature believer?
There's a difference between adrenaline and excitement versus waiting on the Lord. I think back then it was like, I was so excited. I felt like there was this revelation. there was sort of this hurry about it. Right. And I was like, man, if Stephen he was so really reluctant, like he was not on the same page with me. I know now that like the Lord does a whole lot between a husband and wife that I think now I know I'm supposed to ask, wait. He doesn't get in a hurry. He often will speak to me through my husband. Just discerning his voice is through those means has been important in my refinement and sanctification process.
That's interesting. I bring that up because devil masquerades as an angel of light. he made this appear to be an option for you to continue to do yoga, but with the Jesus spin on it. 1 John 4, you talk about in this is like, I was so enthusiastic. I was just in a hurry, and it was like, let's do this. This is great. It's momentum. And it's like, yes, this is God doing this. Let's go. God encourages us to test the spirits in 1 John 4. It talks about testing of the spirits. And there's a few times in Scripture that prophets and others ask God to confirm. You think about the dew on the fleece and not on the fleece.
Oh my gosh.
It was like, if this is you, will you confirm this? Will you confirm this? And the bit about your husband, with Stephen, I tell people, everybody that comes on here, especially if they're married, I always say before you agree to come on, I want you to have a conversation with your spouse, because I find that God speaks through our spouses far more often than we give them credit for. And I thought it sounded like he was a little hesitant at first, and it's interesting. So
it is.
The point of this is, you felt like God was giving you an option to continue with this practice of yoga that you were enjoying in a Christian format, and it was deception.
Yes.
It wasn't his voice. And the point of it is, there are things that you can do to discern those spirits, and and that we can ask God to confirm it. And there's a such thing as waiting on the Lord as well. And and so, that's a really rich spiritual truth that's kind of buried in in this
whole thing
story that I think is pretty rich in the spiritual life.
Yes. And I think too, like, about, wasn't that interesting how he, well, of course he's calling me back into it because someone invited me back into it, right? But I felt like, looking back on it now, it was like, let's go back into this so I can really show you, and the way that the truth was revealed during that season of going to that, like, private client's house and stuff. Thought that was really interesting.
Do you feel like, did you ever experience anything that you might consider or might have considered to be demonic that occurred in that season? Was there like a signal or a sign that you look back on now and it's like?
There was a situation that I was not physically present there, but I was present through online medium, and that I was sort of in charge of, like, monitoring comments, so forth. And there was something that happened that was a live stream with the yoga school that people were on stage, and the whole thing got there was some yucky demonic activity that took place on stage.
On the stage?
Yeah. That we ended up, like, cutting the live stream because of it. And all I know is that something happened to one of the people who were on stage, and there was a lot of panic and a lot of pandemonium, and a lot of people who were doing their in-person training ended up having to leave. It wasn't managed well, like, as far as like, there's a lot of chaos. And that was something, I was supposed to be on that trip, but I was not on that trip. And I believe I was, like, protected in that way. But man, once that once that episode went down, it was like, whoa.
So you felt like that was, as you look back on, this was Christian yoga training that was going on.
Yeah.
As you watched that take place, you can identify that now as maybe a little more of a spiritual signal to the truth of what was going on.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and I look back on that with like even just talking about it now, like my heart really hurts over that.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people were really hurt over that situation.
By that situation versus, you're not talking about
Yeah.
the deception of Christian yoga in general, but that day.
Yeah. That day specifically. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't guess I should ask what specifically took place there. Is it relevant to the conversation here, or is it just
I mean, I think it confirmed a lot of things that we're talking about, you know, and when you're dealing with, I mean, I think that's why you have to take certain things like your ministry, any ministry, like you just have to take that stuff really seriously, and you have to steward those things well. Because you're really, you're dealing with people, and the ministries that we're involved in, like you just have to steward that stuff really well. And it's a responsibility that you have to take seriously.
So I'm a Christian, and I have been doing yoga, and I love my healthy life, and
yeah,
I've been doing Christian yoga so that, we kind of eliminate the possibility of any sort of other religion infiltration taking place. And here is a certified Christian yoga instructor who has had the truth revealed to her, and is clearly speaking out against it. So what is a person to do? Is there an alternative for me that still allows me to go and have a fit, healthy lifestyle and work on mobility and mindfulness and still uphold my Christian faith?
Yeah, I think that is a great question, and one that I have had to personally explore. So, and I'm still exploring. While it may not look like a yoga studio anymore, or taking quote yoga classes, there's still, I mean, I'm a member of a gym. I'm a couple of different other places that I like to exercise and work out, and that I believe are safe, and that honor the Lord, because I do having a healthy lifestyle and exercise is something that I love, and I want to leave people with the fact that like the Lord wants you to treat your body as a temple. And I do look at exercise and that kind of thing like as worship. But being a member at the YMCA, or I actually do Pure Barre too, which is another form of exercise, and there's studios all over the country too. So yeah, I think if you seek the Lord, He will be very clear. And in my experience, I've just had to switch some things up, and in my routine, and that's always kind of changing too.
So if you had to, alternatives to yoga, Pure Barre is one.
I think so.
There's no spiritual connection there. It's just, I don't know what goes on there.
Yeah. It's more of like a exercise to like rhythm-based music, and it's just a sweet community. A lot of low impact, some high. There's weight lifting, strength training with it too, and resistance training. There also
has to be some sort of alternative to yoga, stretching, right? Stretching is really good for you. If you want to, if you think you're getting old and
Right.
you're not stretching, you probably just need to stretch, because that's
Yeah, I have seen, there are some like non-yoga stretching YouTube channels. I have actually researched a little bit. I can't think of the names right now, but, and yeah, just stretching like, channels on YouTube. So,
so Google
yeah.
non-yoga stretching.
Yes, actually. And there's some content out there last time I checked for that. But yeah, I mean, gosh, we can find just about anything
Yeah.
now. But yeah, those have been my main solutions, just like walking, strength training, Pure Barre. And gosh, that's kind of all.
Yeah. People are, I know people are really tied to yoga, and increasingly people are coming out of New Age
Yes.
and saying, I was deceived and it makes me sick, but all I can do is tell you.
I know.
And some people have some pretty significant demonic encounters
Yes.
to come to that realization.
Yes.
Others don't. But I know, and I've just, in times we have moved into this subject matter
Mm-hmm.
just on this podcast, you can go into the comments section, and there are some really aggressive positions in support of yoga as a Christian.
Oh, I know.
And
I know.
you're just like, okay, man, you just haven't become awakened to it
No,
yet.
and you just cannot separate the two. And to me, I'm just like, why would you want to risk it?
Yeah.
Like, do you love it that much? Like, why would you want to even put yourself in a position where you would be like disappointing? Like it's just disappointing. And why would you want to do that to your God? And I don't know. I mean, and why would you want to put yourself or your loved ones in danger like that?
Yeah, because I believe it's pretty consistent throughout Scripture that there are consequences
correct
for those things. When
Yeah.
you are yoking yourself to the spiritual side of things, whose mission is to steal, to kill, and destroy you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you're effectively yoking yourself to that,
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to end well.
It's just not.
It's their mission to destroy you, not to build you, not to
I know.
make that side appealing to you.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
And I guess I just pray for a spirit of humility, and just for, again, like, this is everything I've shared is like been my conviction and my experience and story. And just to, you know, if you're seeking peace and answers, like, it's just seek the Lord in it. Ask him what's best for you. Ask him, how do you want me to exercise, Lord? Like, that's maybe silly, but like, I'd legit ask that question. Like, how do you want me to move my body?
why would that be silly?
I know. It's like,
If you
but
believe,
it's not.
but if you believe that God is real,
right.
that's the only thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't believe that God's real, and it's just kind of a silly, superstitious thing that we've
Right.
kind of adapted ourselves into doing, and, you know, it's not
Right.
actually real, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then that would sound silly. But if you are connected to God and he has been faithful to you and you recognize him as true, why wouldn't you ask him how he wants you to exercise? He wants you to be fit. He tells us that our bodies are his temple. This is where he lives inside of us. It's very clear.
Yes.
Every bit of the gospel tells us that.
Mm-hmm.
And we know it. We've experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't he give us the way to keep ourselves whole and healthy,
And
ready
safe.
to serve him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ask God.
Right.
What a novel concept,
I know.
right?
Revelation.
So what is your faith walk like now?
My husband's been, he gets up and goes to the gym pretty early. And so I usually wake up with him and I'll have my time with Jesus, go, get my kids up, them out the door. And then I'm also dressed and ready to go exercise usually. And some days it'll look like prayer appointments. Those are usually a couple hours with another trained prayer minister when people do come to receive prayer. I like to walk and hike with my dog, and he is the best. And we do a lot of prayer walks around my kids' school. And I'm usually picking them up from school and then hanging out with them or running them to an activity or sport. But I was called to a life like what I just described a lot longer before I was obedient to it. So I didn't, like, the whole stay-at-home mom concept was like not something I was raised with. So it's so much peace with the role in the life that the Lord's called me to now. And like, it's blessed me and my family. I could never even make it up. Like, so yeah, that's kind of loosely what it looks like. Yeah. Pretty, I mean, is that boring? Like, it might be boring, but I don't know.
Now, I want to know how you connect with God. I want to know what that is and how you are experiencing him in your faith walk.
Mm-hmm. I would say so much of it right now is just when I'm reading the Bible and I'm in his word, I'm just really asking the Holy Spirit to speak to me. And you mentioned earlier about throwing out fleeces, and man, I don't know that I've ever thrown out as many fleeces as I have as to saying yes to coming here. So he has in many ways like confirmed that. And so when I'm, after, of course, the hustle bustle of getting kids to school and everything, it's like when I'm on walks and I'm just with my dog or, just at home, it is just a lot of like constant conversation and constant, like he doesn't even have to be like speaking back to me, but it's just a lot of like me praising him, and just whether that's like while I'm doing a mundane chore of like folding clothes, he will just remind me of like the work that he sees me doing when no one else sees me doing it, or like it may not seem significant, but just kind of remaining faithful in where he's just called me, and having time when I'm with other people that I get to pray for, and the miracles that I have seen just simply in him taking me from one part of my life in to where I was like just such a mess, and taking me to a place where I no longer drink and do drugs, to now where I am able to really just like operate in this fullness of who I believe that he's called me to be. And I just love it when he brings opportunities to me to pray with people and to have people also encounter him, that just change the trajectory of people's lives. And that's like, honestly, there's so much intimacy in that place when in prayer ministry for me. Sometimes that's when I feel like I encounter him the most, is actually when I'm getting to minister to other people, which may seem strange, but yeah.
What you described right there doesn't sound like the person you described at the beginning of this conversation.
Gosh. Whoa. No.
It might not have been a switch that was flipped overnight.
Right.
But to see who you are now in comparison or relation to who you described that you were before, and so entrenched were you in that you believed that that's just who you were.
Yep.
And who you would always be.
Mm-hmm.
And so prove to me that God is real. It's that kind of transformation to me.
Yes.
It's almost a rebaking of your DNA.
Yes. Love
right?
that. Yes.
And
oh my gosh. Very good. Yes. Very good.
and I guess maybe a rebaking of your spiritual DNA. And I feel like that as well. And are there things from who I was before that, still lurk about in places? Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
But in that sanctification process, I feel like I have been exposed to things like deliverance.
Yeah.
Even self-deliverance. I go on prayer walks as well.
Yeah.
And I have vocal time with God there. I wear my AirPods so that it looks like I'm talking on the phone sometimes.
They don't.
And I mean,
Yep, I know that. I know
it's
that.
in the neighborhood, right?
I know that well.
But anyway, but I think he reveals to us ways to get closer to him.
Mm-hmm.
And not, a smack on the back of the head with a ruler for breaking his rules, but I think he's pulls us into places and ways that we can be closer to him, so that we can experience the fulfillment of knowing him more richly. And if it's the removal of alcohol because it's blocking some part of access to him, then he's helping us with that. He's going to guide us into that. And if it's having things in your home that are directly offensive to God, whether you know it or not, you should do an inventory. You should go through your home and your closets and things like that. It's like, what is this? Is this a dream catcher in my house?
Yeah.
How about we get rid of that?
Yeah.
Because that's spirituality that's not of God, and I don't want something to stand between me and my Creator.
I know.
And I see you now. Halloween's a different thing for you, and social functions are a different thing for you. You're actively involved in praying, intercessor prayer for other people, which, by the way, is a pretty fulfilling thing to do. The world teaches you it's about me, pray for yourself and pray for financial abundance and pray for your health and complete healing and that sort of thing. There's something about switching the screen from selfie to out there that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So as someone who did live in that place of I'm stuck with the burden of alcohol. I'm not an alcoholic, but I'm probably not far from it if I really were honest about it. And the places that you were in, what would be your message to that Saralyn and the tens of thousands that are watching this right now that are in that place? What is your message to those people?
For it is freedom that Jesus came to set us free. And that's Galatians 5:1. And I would say that I get it. So many other people get it. And that there is so much more freedom on the other side. We just need to seek the Lord and ask Him for help. And that's exactly what I did in my experience. And that's exactly what's happened. That it's nothing that I did on my own, in my own strength. That He did all of it. And that again, I thought this was how it was, how it always was going to be. But then Jesus, I just did not know there was a way out, and there is a way out. And Jesus is the way out. So I hope that's my encouragement, because it's real and He is real, and He really did it. Like, He really did it and is still doing it. And, yeah. And I'm an open book about it. There's hope.
That's fantastic. Saralyn Hamilton, thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
What a great realization that God constantly pursues us so that we can experience more of Him. It's yet another reminder of God's great love for us. If someone you know came to mind while you were watching this episode, we encourage you to share it with them by clicking the share button below. It may be just what they need for God to start them on a path of awakening and freedom from the things that may be blocking them from more fully experiencing God. We'd love to hear from you. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave us a comment below if you've got thoughts or experiences around Christian yoga, alcohol, or even Halloween, and let us know how you navigate these things relative to your faith. Our comments sections have become a really good space for encouragement, questions, and spiritual insights. If you need prayer, if you're looking for your next good faith-building book, or if you'd like to reach us, please visit our website at astrongerfaith.org. And finally, this ministry is primarily funded by the generosity of our listeners who become donors. We are deeply grateful for the listeners that God has called to support and to fuel this ministry by becoming donors. If you feel like God is prompting you to support this ministry financially, please visit astrongerfaith.org/give for options. Until next time, we pray for your peace and for a stronger faith for you and those you love.